I used to believe there are only two metabolic types, fast or slow, that they're genetic, and that unfortunately, I was born with the slow type. Yet here I am looking like this the last 10 years. And the shocking part, I got here by stopping many popular high metabolism habits, like going from low carb to 50% of my calories coming from carbs, from doing 8+ hours of fasting to zero fasting, from efficient workouts to unoptimized playful movement. Because the truth is, our metabolism isn't fixed. It's adaptive, meaning you're not stuck with your current metabolism, but can change it, even if you think yours is slow, damaged, or broken right now. The key is to 1. Identify your current metabolic type. 2. Find the 1 to 2 small changes that are the biggest levers for your type. And 3. Fine-tune those changes to fit your unique body. This is how I went from a sluggish metabolism to I can't believe I'm losing fat while not doing much metabolism. And it's not just me. This is the #1 surprise of the 1,000+ weight loss clients I've worked with. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to do to fire up your metabolism, lose fat, all the while thinking, I can't believe it can be this easy. The metabolic types sit on a bell curve. On the left side, you have the stuck metabolic type, where you're losing 0 to 0.3% fat per week on average. You may even gain some fat in this type. Also notice I said fat, not weight. After all, you want to be losing fat, not muscle, water, bone, glycogen, etc. Use the body fat tracker linked in the description below to see how much of your weight change was fat versus lean mass. Next to the stuck type is the slow type, where you're losing 0.3 to 0.5% fat per week on average. Then further to the right is the mid metabolic type, where you're losing 0.5 to 0.8% fat per week on average. And finally, on the rightmost side, you have the fast metabolic type, where you're losing 0.8% or more fat per week on average. Now, you may look at this and think, I need to be at the rightmost end because fast equals good. But you'd be wrong. A fast metabolism is like driving a gas-guzzling sports car. It burns fuel quickly, but it's fragile and needs constant input. People with the fast metabolic type get hungry faster, so they eat more frequently, and therefore end up gaining fat because it's hard to be rational when you're hungry so often. So it's not necessarily a superpower, it's just a different setup. And here's the twist. The fast and stuck metabolic types have more in common with each other than they do with their neighbors, slow or mid, because both the fast and stuck have bodies which are not reactive to changes in nutrition, movement, stress, and sleep, meaning their bodies are stuck in the same gear no matter how the conditions change. What you really want is a metabolism where you can eat without gaining quickly, eat less without crashing or hitting a wall, and go on vacation and bounce back easily. You want a flexible metabolism. That's real freedom. And the best part? Even though the percentage of people with each type falls into proportions of a bell curve, you aren't stuck where you're at right now. You can make changes to shift your metabolic type toward the flexible mid type. And if you're in the mid type, you need to avoid doing things that push you out of mid into the slow or stuck type. But first, how do you make your metabolism flexible if you're not the mid type? For all types, stop believing metabolism myths that make things worse. For example, no matter which type you are, I'm sure you've experienced at least a couple weeks, especially at the start of a weight loss attempt, where the scale is moving like you want it to. I bet you felt super motivated to keep doing your plan. Okay, let's be real, not just do your plan, but dial up your plan. Eat even cleaner, move even more. At first, this goes really well, but then 3 to 4 weeks in, suddenly you're hungrier, your cravings are up, and you're feeling more and more tired. Why does this happen? Because think of each day in your weight loss attempt as throwing a rock in a jar. Each clean day adds another rock. By week 3 or 4, the jar overflows. The rocks are your hunger, and when they overflow, your body has had enough. It fires up your hunger to get you to eat more. But if you keep ignoring your hunger, your body adapts by becoming more efficient. Which sounds good, but in fat loss, it means you burn less doing the same things. Now you're working just as hard, but getting less and less results. And what do you do when this happens? If you're like Jane, a client of ours exactly in this situation, you double down. Tighter eating, more workouts. And guess what happened when she did this? Her body also doubled down, burning even less, increasing hunger, making her feel like she's in a tug of war she can't win. All of us are prone to this downward spiral, especially fast burners like Jane. She hit her goal weight faster than most, but when she joined our program, we discovered her body composition had too much fat and not enough muscle. She looked smaller, but still fluffy. She felt frustrated, confused, and tired. But instead of pushing harder, we made 3 smart, small changes to shift her body from a fast burner into something better, someone with a flexible metabolism. First, we stopped her from getting into a tug of war with her body in the first place. How? By first doing something that all types should do. Use the body fat tracker linked in the description below to make sure your joy over your weight loss is warranted, meaning most of that weight loss was fat loss. Now, to fine-tune this to your body, if you find yourself losing more lean mass than fat, then up your calories by 50 to 100 per day and check again next week how your fat loss changed. By the way, if you don't know what your starting calorie target should be, use the calorie calculator linked in the description below to find out. So, is this enough to fix lean mass loss? For some, it will be, but for others, it won't be enough. In that case, next, set a target to get 18 to 20% of your calories from protein. You can calculate using this formula. Check again if lean mass loss stops. If not, then if you've not been exercising, add 1 session per week of strength training. And then check at end of the week if that stops your lean mass loss. If not, add another strength session next week until you stop losing more lean mass than fat. But what if you're the slow type, where most of your weight loss is likely to be fat loss even at the start, but your fat loss tends to plateau way sooner than the fast type? Meet Marco, who came in with this type. He had tried all sorts of gymnastics to make fat loss faster and last longer for him. Before he joined my program, he was spending hours meal planning and prepping to eat every 2 to 3 hours, thinking that'll speed up his metabolism. But did it? Let's look at the science. Thermic energy of food, or TEF, is the part of the metabolism pyramid that accounts for how much we burn by digesting our food. TEF is based on total amount you eat in a day, not meal frequency. So no, it wasn't boosting his metabolism, and his fat loss rate confirmed this in practice. After we pointed this out, Marco said, okay, frequency doesn't matter, but what about metabolism boosting foods? Turns out he had been planning these meals to always include lemon water, coffee, chili, and many of the foods on popular metabolism burning foods lists. Again, turning to the science, these foods contribute tiny boosts to your metabolism that last for mere minutes to an hour. The boost is not worth the hours of meal planning, which again was confirmed by his fat loss rate. By cutting both of these out, we saved Marco hours in a week right there. But what about on the exercise front? Marco had been turning up the dial not just on the food front. He had been doing HIIT after learning about the afterburn effect, meaning you continue to burn calories for hours after finishing an intense HIIT session. This is actually true, but we're not machines. We need to look at the second order consequences of any action. In Marco's case, the second order consequence was his hunger was often out of control after these sessions. So sure, he had an afterburn effect, but it became totally moot given how he'd eat afterwards. Marco's response was very typical. I just need more willpower. This is like saying you're going to swim upstream in a river with a strong current going the other way. Would you bet money on Marco outswimming the current with sheer effort? And for how long? I'm guessing you wouldn't take that bet, and you'd be right not to. Instead of trying to outmuscle the situation, do the smart thing. Build a boat, a structure that lets you stay afloat and move forward even when the current pushes back. So what's the structure for a slow type to make fat loss steady? First off, we had to stop relying on tiny paddles to move the boat. In Marco's case, HIIT was a tiny paddle not just for hunger reasons, but also because only 5% of our metabolism comes from structured exercise like HIIT. So then what is the right thing for Marco and slow types to do? First, create a calorie deficit that your slow type body can tolerate for many months. We have found this to be a 15% calorie deficit. Second, we told Marco to calorie cycle once every week, meaning eat more than target one day, eat lesser than target the other 6 days, and this averages him out to target for the week. You can fine-tune the number of high and low days to your lifestyle using the calorie calculator linked below. But why even do calorie cycling? Because calorie cycling is an effective way to retrain your body into flexibility. It trains your body to deal with high eating days and low eating days, which by the way is a natural eating pattern for most thin people. But even after all this, Marco's fat loss was inconsistent. 1 week down, next week flat. At first, we thought this was just his natural rhythm, but something didn't add up. We looked at his measurements and saw his waist and hip measurements moving in the opposite direction every other week, meaning he was bloated every other week. We then looked at his food logs and found that whenever he ate beans, he'd have this issue. While the mid and fast types can get away with losing fat while having food sensitivities, the slow type must keep their body calm on all fronts because their body turns up efficiency when confronted with any issue, inflammation, stress, anything. So we had Marco cut back on beans and understand that whenever he indulged in them, that week he'd be bloated and therefore the readings wouldn't be able to tell us if he lost fat or not. So we'd have to wait until next week to know for sure. Look at your own digestive and skin issues to fine-tune this change to your body. This removed the alternate week fat loss, but then we noticed his fat loss would still plateau every 2 months. That's when Marco's 6-hour sleep average became the biggest domino to tackle. He needed to sleep 8 hours at night to make his body feel safe so it could retrain to be flexible. But what if any change at all, even tiny, freaks your body out into plateauing within 2 to 3 weeks? That's what the stuck types face. Layla came to us after eating at less than 1,200 calories for years. At every weight loss plateau, instead of realizing what got me here won't get me to goal and changing what she was doing, she kept playing the same card over and over again. This chronic dieting killed her metabolic flexibility, such that to lose fat, she'd have to keep lowering her calories to the point that her food intake couldn't possibly provide all the nutrients her body needs. This isn't healthy, and therefore there was no way we were going to coach her to eat even less. So if dropping her calories further is unhealthy, but that's the only way to keep losing fat, what do? We need to reassure Layla's body that it's safe, that she has abundant food, so it can boost her metabolism again and return to a flexible state. How do we reassure her body in practice? By eating more, but not binging. I used to say to reverse diet, but I've changed my mind for the stuck type. If you're not losing fat at 1,200 when your maintenance is 1,600, the calorie amount at which your body feels reassured, then incrementally upping your calorie target by 100 a week until you reach 1,600 is wasting time. Instead, I recommend what we did with Layla. We bumped her up to what the calorie calculator says is her maintenance calories right away. This was around 1,600 calories for her. We told her to get most of these extra calories from protein and carbs, not just fat. And we held at this target for 2 months, fully expecting she'd gain some weight and fat in the first 3 to 4 weeks. We also had her monitor her hunger, energy, craving, sleep, performance at the gym, steps, and body image thoughts. Why? Because this process is like tuning a radio. When you hit the right station, that is your actual maintenance target, everything comes in clear. Your energy, hunger, workouts, even mood. So we need to hear, as in track these, to know if you've reached actual maintenance. If you had been undereating for less than 6 months before starting this metabolic reboot phase, stick to the calorie target for as many months as you had been undereating. So if it was 4 months, then stick to the calorie target for 4 months. Or if you had been undereating for more than 6 months, then stick to the calorie target for 6 months straight. Then what do you do after the 6 months? Now you're finally ready to switch from metabolic reboot phase to fat loss phase. Do a 15% calorie deficit. If your fat loss lasts about 3 months, then your final calorie target during the metabolic reboot phase was correct, and your metabolism is rebooted. But if your fat loss dies in less than 2 months, the final target was too low, or you didn't stick to it long enough. Repeat this entire process correctly. Now, what if you're at the mid-flexible type, or have slid into it from other types? How do you make sure you don't slide out of it and into the other inflexible types? Carmen came to us with the mid-type metabolism, but had been sliding toward the slow type over the past year. Her questions like, I feel like my body is fighting me. Why does weight loss feel harder than before? And why do I gain more than I lost whenever I fall off? Told us she had been sliding toward the slow type even before we got her measurements. Why were things getting harder and worse? First, she had been assuming all of her weight loss is fat loss, when in fact, she had lost more muscle than she needed to. And since each pound of muscle burns about 3 times more calories than each pound of fat, her metabolic rate reduced more than necessary. This meant that eating the same as before she started losing weight would put her at a calorie surplus now, whereas before, it was her maintenance. This is why she kept gaining more weight after each failed weight loss attempt, and why her weight was trending upward over time. Second, at every fat loss plateau, she'd think, I need to eat even less, and slashed her calories even more. This made her body think there is a food shortage and it must do more with less. So it got efficient at burning less and less, despite her doing the same things. As a result, her metabolism over time not only declined, but also became more and more inflexible. She was sliding into the slow type. So what should she have done instead to remain in the mid type? First, she should have been monitoring her fat versus lean mass loss, not just weight loss. Second, the fact that she lost more muscle than fat means her calorie deficit was too big. She should have started at a 15% deficit and stuck to it despite the urge to speed things up due to upcoming events or impatience. Third, she had been restricting her carbs during her weight loss attempts. She shouldn't have done this because she had no hormonal or medical conditions that required it. In fact, overly restricting carbs or fat can reduce your metabolic flexibility. So unless medically required, eat at the general health ratios of 50% of your calories coming from carbs, 18 to 20% coming from protein, and 30 to 32% from fat. Fourth, her metabolic burn from neat or unstructured daily movement like fidgeting, leg bouncing, and walking was 5%, when it can be up to 15%. That's a 200 to 400 extra calorie burn for her size. So we created a roadmap to up her steps to 10,000 per day. And lastly, plateaus every 3 to 4 months are normal. Your metabolism will become more efficient the longer you stay in a deficit, especially if you're not taking regular breaks. But the way to break through a plateau isn't to eat even less, but to reassure your body of food abundance. So just like with the stuck type, shoot back to your maintenance target. But unlike the stuck type, you only need to stay there for 2 to 4 weeks. Monitor your hunger, energy, steps, performance at gym. Once they stop improving and you feel emotionally ready to return to losing fat, only then are you fueled up for the next leg of your fat loss journey. Now lower back to a 15% deficit. But how do you sequence these changes according to your body fat stage, so that you aren't wasting time with more tiny paddles and leaky boats? You can do it in 2 ways. One, if you want my help shortcutting through all the trial and error to creating the conditions for maximum metabolic flexibility and therefore easy, predictable fat loss that lasts a lifetime, then learn more about my weight loss program in the description and comments below. Or if you want to DIY it, then you don't want to ignore this video where I'll walk through how to sequence these changes per body fat stage. Because if you try to do it all at once, you know from experience that you'll burn out and be back to square one yet again. So you don't want to miss the complete step-by-step breakdown here. And always remember, you can do it.